So one of the things I was talking to my friend about at work, it's kind of an awesome conversation. It's nice when things open up like that. It was kind of interesting because I'll just go over this scenario really quick. I was in a room of people that I work with. There was about four of us in there, and we were talking, chatting, and I started talking about, some more deeper subjects and things. And it was funny how the other people kind of peeled off of the conversation and kind of went to their smartphone and were talking. And me and this person I work with just had this really deep conversation. And it was really awesome. It was just a really, it's interesting when you bring out information. It's not, you're not doing it for the benefit of someone else. You're actually, it's a combination of sharing the information with them brings it out of you. And sometimes I'll say things or, have a conversation with someone and it'll just be amazing, like how much stuff came out. And I can't even believe it. And it'll come out with such clarity that it's something that if I sat down and tried to write it all out or something, it just wouldn't, it just really, I'd really feel bogged down in it. But when the information's flowing, when you have that, um, it's like there's an energy behind it. That subtle God energy is behind it. It's just really awesome. I guess people call it being in the flow or whatever, but it's just, it's just awesome. But anyway, I was talking to her about surrender, and at the end of the day, the end of our rope is this thing called surrender. So, um, I remember when I was a kid, I think I was like in fourth grade, and we had a poster in my fourth grade class that said, when you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. Well, that's kind of what we're at right now, right? I mean, a lot of people are being faced with, pushed into situations of, their, you know, economic foundation is just being wiped out daily. I mean, every day they're witnessing, you know, um, really how bad it could be. They're seeing how things could fail. And I know for me, I never handled stress well, never handled anxiety well. I had actually, I believe I could have been diagnosed with anxiety disorder or some kind of disorder had I gone to a quote unquote therapist in my past, because I just didn't handle stress well. I would get real anxious. I would have almost like feel like a tightness in my throat, a tightness in my chest, and I would feel like almost like a suffocation. And sometimes, they call it generalized anxiety disorder, where you don't even know what's causing the anxiety. You just feel anxious. And I was gripped with this for a long time. I had this my whole life. And when I learned heartfulness meditation, I had a session. I've alluded to it before, and I won't go into the total detail of it, but I'll give you a background on it. I was, I was feeling like, I wasn't sure, is this the path for me? A lot of doubt, a lot of self doubt. And I wanted to make sure I was doing something that was, in line with what God had in His plan for me. And I prayed to God, just heartfelt, tears running down my cheeks. And when I went to bed that night, after I prayed that, I closed my eyes and I saw Babaji. Babaji appeared to me, and he was just looking at me, and it wasn't any other interaction. It was I just saw his face, and it was kind of an alabaster, like a white. It was no, it wasn't in color, but definitely him. And he was just looking at me, like kind of sizing me up, like, okay, um, I'm going to work with you basically. And so a couple of days later, I sat down to meditate, and um, I started thinking about, you know, how grateful I was to all the different things that had put me on a spiritual path. I had become a quote unquote born again Christian when I was in my teen years. My parents had gone back to church to try to save their marriage, which it didn't work, but it was good for us as a family. The Christian faith there's some really good people. I met a really amazing guy who really operated on a level of love. He was a school teacher, and I just felt a kinship to him, and um, it was good. I went to church camp a couple summers, and it was anticlimactic. I mean, at the end of the day, it ended up just being very dogmatic, and but I still feel like Jesus, was a guide. Uh, Jesus is a powerful figure, and I felt a kinship to Jesus. I still do. And so I was thinking in my mind, I was, just imagining, seeing Jesus and thanking him, and, for what he had, given, and how much love and everything. And then I turned and I saw Maharishi, and I was like, oh, Maharishi, thank you so much for, you know, helping me along the path. And, transcendental meditation was a big step for me. It helped get me out of a lot of the, I mean, I expanded my consciousness a lot with the TM, and the time I spent doing TM, I read a lot of books and just opened my mind up to a lot of things that I wouldn't have been exposed to. And um, and then I thanked him, and his line of masters, and Panditji. He was a person that I had followed, and he was kind of an offshoot of TM, more of a heart based. It's called Art of Living. It's good. They teach a um, Kriya Yoga, which is a breathing technique, and I did that for a few years, and and then it was like I was imagining this in my mind, and all of a sudden I turned to the side, and Paul was standing there, and I was actually really surprised. I was like, "What's Paul doing here?" From Pockets of the Future, and he just kind of stood beside behind me and put his hands on my shoulders and turned me, and I looked in front of me, and it was Kamlesh, and Kamlesh was sitting there in a chair, and I was, I mean, to say stunned, I would have to say I was stunned. I was amazed. Like, what is he doing here? This is crazy, right? But he started to transmit, and behind him was this wall of love that was, I mean, it was, I call it a tsunami. I don't know how to explain it. It was something I'd never witnessed. I'd never witnessed such potential power. It's something that your mind really can't conceive. Like you could think of like when they detonated the nuclear weapons, the first nuclear tests they did, and people were just shocked at the power of that, right? I mean, it was like, wow, that's powerful. Okay, that would be like throwing a particle of water into the ocean. That's how big this love was. It was on a scale that, like I said, I can't explain it. And I was just standing there, just completely humbled, like to my core. But I just started feeling these waves of love coming from Kamlesh, and it was like a cleaning energy. The energy I felt coming off of him was similar to the transmissions I felt, but it was 1,000 times more intense. It was like having standing in front of a fire hose, and that if they open the valve of the fire hose more, you would just get blasted. But it opened just enough to really deeply clean. And when I finished with that experience, I came out of the meditation. Of course, it was, really shook me up. It was really amazing. I was, super happy about it, super excited, very grateful. But, I never had anxiety again. And it was the confirmation I needed to know that I was doing something that was, in line with what God wanted for me. Now, that being said, I still I still have my doubts. I still have my weakness. That's part of being a human being, okay? And the reason I bring this up is even when you have this amazing profound experience, which by the way kind of cured me of wanting to have big experiences. Because one of the things that when I was meditating, doing TM, I always was looking forward to having some big experience, okay? Some whatever, whatever experience. People have all kinds of amazing experiences. It's real easy to get caught up in that mindset of, oh, I had this amazing experience, and oh, I'm just enlightened. I'm so much superior to everyone now, because that's really what it is, right? It's all about your ego. It's all about clarifying your ego, confirming your worth, right? Based on the experience you had. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. And so this kind of cured me of that. So it was like a reset for my meditation. Instead of going into meditation um, having these expectations, I went into meditation and just had no expectation. Just thy will be done. And that was a huge move in this step towards surrender. That's kind of what I want this video to be about, is surrendering is a process that takes time. This isn't something that happens overnight. We don't just, you know, even when we stand before God, there's going to be a there's going to be some resistance. And what we have right now is this opportunity to remove the resistance. In other words, in Sahaj Marg, they talk about heartfulness, they talk about samskaras, where you are removing this, you're removing the, the impressions, the things that have caused, like in a riverbed, you have, the water moves through the rock, it scours the rock, these patterns keep reproducing themselves. And you'll see this in your life where you'll keep having the same problem come up, or the same situation come up, or you know like my family dynamic growing up, with my parents and the difficulties in their relationship and the struggles. I have seen those same struggles in my own marriage and my own life. So these things just repeat themselves. And so the really beautiful part about this godly energy is it will assist us in cleaning off these samskaras. Now, this is one of the powerful things about doing the heartfulness system, is it's very different from other kind of meditation. The only analogy I can really think of is if you took a a plate and you baked some stuff onto the plate, or say you cook something in a pan in the oven. You know how that stuff just gets caked on, you can't get it off. And you could sit there and you could get the scrubber out, you could get the steel wool, and you're just sitting there scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing. I mean, you're working really hard to get that off, okay? Or you can soak it in soapy water and wait about 20 minutes and it'll just come right out. Well, I consider that heartfulness is the soaking in the hot water. That's the difference of the meditation techniques. You will still clean off some scars doing these other practices, but it's very labor intensive. Hatha yoga is about purifying mind, body, spirit in a way so that this godly energy will shine through. Well, it's very, very difficult. Very few people can apply that kind of aesthetic to themselves. I mean, it's very hard. Heartfulness, you don't have to apply that aesthetic. You just receive transmission. And when I was listening to the meditation the other day, the guy that was leading the intro to the meditation, the relaxation, he just said, just give the consideration that you're able to receive this transmission. Not even sitting there thinking, oh, I've got to receive transmission. Oh, it's so vital. It's so important. I've got to have a transmission. Instead, just give the thought, oh, it's okay to receive it. Just let yourself receive the transmission. It will come of its own accord. There's very little resistance there. And then when I speak of the heart mind, I'm talking about resistance. If you're feeling resistance, it is the old part, okay? So when you're facing And believe me, I'm not I'm not preaching from this level where I've achieved this, okay? I have a lot of resistance every day. I get frustrated at home. I get frustrated at work. I worry about my finances. I worry about taking care of my family. I'm not saying that I don't have worry. I'm saying anxiety is gone, but I still, you know, I want to make the rubber meet the road. That's my goal as a provider and as a father and caregiver. But we can use those vicissitudes, those bumps in the road, those difficulties to gauge where we're at on this level of surrender. And it's a very subtle thing because it's kind of like one of those deals like, how much effort do I put in and how much do I step back? It's a very, it's kind of like parenting. You can overparent where you're just on your kids and oh, you got to wear this and you've got to do this and you got to go to this and this and this and this and this. And you're just like planning out every second of their life. They don't even really have to think for themselves. And you can do the opposite. You can be totally let your kids free range and run around and like wild animals. Neither one of those is ideal, right? We want to kind of be in the middle somewhere where we're just making little adjustments, but we're doing it from a loving perspective. And that requires detachment, right? That's where the detachment comes in. We're making these little subtle adjustments on ourselves. So let's say you get caught up in something, you feel that anger, you feel that despair. I feel it when I look at Twitter, when I would watch too much Twitter, when I see mainstream media, when I'm in a patient's room and they've got CNN on, I start to feel the tension rise. I feel the anger. I feel the frustration. That's normal. That's a normal thing. But it's also an opportunity at that moment to say, okay, is this something I want to hang on to? Do I want to follow this path or do I want to go to the heart? Do I want to go to that remembrance? Do I want to remember God? Do I want to remember the divine? And for me, I think about that experience I had with the transmission from Kamlish, and I think about that godly power and that godly energy, and that has given me a tremendous amount of faith because that was something that you know I always had this kind of, you always have these doubts. Well, if God's real, if God's this, then why is all this stuff going on? And we start asking questions, like what's the point? What is all this? But we can shift that into something we can tweak it. We can tweak those doubts into actual um, parts of our faith, parts of our trust in God. We can start to say, okay, God, I don't understand, but I trust. I trust in you. I trust in your power. I've witnessed it. I know. I felt the transmission. I felt my heart softening. I can I can see that I'm making progress. It doesn't mean I'm there yet. I'm still not there yet. And as long as I'm in this physical body, maybe I won't be. But we can always ask ourselves that question. How can I let go more? How can I how can I surrender more to God's will, to God's energy? We can always ask that question. That's all we can do. Sometimes we can't even do that. Sometimes we just have to be in the moment and be angry and you know that's just the way it is. But if we can learn to relax and surrender to that godly energy, it's just an opportunity to remove things that much faster, to remove these some scars in a much faster way. And again, it takes time, it takes persistence. Um, Daji made a comment that it takes intense self-effort. Intense self-effort is required. It's not a freebie by any means, but it to me it just seems like a simple path. Like it just makes sense to me. That's why I really am drawn to it. Okay, you guys have a good day.